Poitras can handle top six playing with Brad Marchand. You leave Zacha with David Pastrnak, and then you slide Coyle down into the third line center spot. You're starting to talk about rebuilding that depth at the forward position that you've had before, and really like getting back to what you were even last year a little bit, if it all works out that way. And I think it's just going to make them a stronger team moving forward, and a deeper team where that depth looked like it was really being challenged going into this year.
Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can check out my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Join up with a premium membership and you'll get all of my content fully sent into your inbox. Every time I write something new about the NHL and the Bruins, it will get sent right to you when you sign up for the newsletter, and you get to read everything if you sign up for the premium membership. As always, thank you to our sponsors, Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Meals ready, delicious meals ready in 2 minutes, and also Fanduel Sportsbook, right in the swing of the NFL season. And now with NHL season getting going too, tons of stuff to put wagers on. So head over to Fanduel Sportsbook and get your account going there. As always, a good buddy of mine, a great colleague, Mick Colageo, joining me today for the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I believe this is the 31st episode. Mick, tell everybody out there where they can find your stuff these days.
Yeah, thank you. My Rink Wrap blog has been revived independently and can now be accessed at Rink Wrap MC, M as in Mick, C as in Colageo, rinkwrapmc.com. And I link to X, Twitter.
Yeah, we call it Twitter here. I'm not adhering to anything Elon Musk, any of his ego parade that's going on, calling it X instead of Twitter. But let's not talk about Elon Musk. Let's talk about the task at hand here, the subject of the day. Boston Bruins hockey is back. The NHL is back. I let my 10-year-old son Finn, stay up to watch Connor Bedard's debut against the Pittsburgh Penguins last night, and just excited that hockey is here. What's your excitement level just that the NHL is back after another long play out the string preseason, especially where they stopped playing games almost like a week ago, the Bruins, and just the NHL at large and the Bruins back. Where's your excitement level, Mick?
I'm ready. I'm Pete Carrolled all up. I'm
jacked and pumped.
I'm pumped and jacked and yeah, right. I'm the college coach in the pros. But yeah, this is exciting times. I'm a hockey junkie, so I love seeing the Bruins go through. I wasn't looking forward to saying goodbye to Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci, right. But I'm so intrigued by watching the Bruins trot this out and see what this looks like and see how their offense comes together with everybody in the game, everybody completely motivated, and now we'll finally find out what kind of a ceiling we can put on this team as far as what they can build out with this particular roster and how good are they? How good were they? How good will they be? Will the goaltending be as good? Will the defense be as good? Will the puck movement be as good? Just had some and because we all know that the forward situation got turned inside out, upside down, and sideways, and yep. Now young leaders have to become full bore. It's you now. There's nobody else. No other generation ahead of you. So
yeah, and there's going to be, and Dupes had actually mentioned this when we had him on last week too, about just what you're talking about, and I totally agree. Like the unknown of this team kept things pretty interesting in training camp because it's just vastly different than what we're used to over the last 20 years. Subtracting David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron from the equation just radically changes what this team is going to look like on the ice, how they're going to function. Definitely the forward group, but I think just overall how the 5-man unit is going to function on the ice. Special teams, they were both a huge part. So there's a lot of different things that I think are going to be very different with this Boston Bruins team. And one thing I was watching in preseason, and it's hard to gauge sometimes because some of the veterans are sort of going through the preseason motions, the guys that know they're going to be on the team. But there were long stretches, and I think almost every game, if not every game, they were outshot by a pretty wide margin. And it seemed like the other team had the puck a lot more than they did. And it's going to be interesting to see if that plays out going into the regular season, and how much of that is a function of like the centers and, just not the puck possession and not having it as much as the guys that seem to have the puck on their stick quite a bit in those top two lines, the two, top six centers. And that's going to be one that I'm going to be watching pretty closely, because I remember last year and for in recent memory, for my mind, the Bruins were always out shooting teams they were playing against. They always had a lot more shots. Even when they lost, there was a wide shot on net advantage. And it seems like something puck possession wise, they had enjoyed an advantage against almost every team that they played for a long period of time. And, some of that is obviously the defensemen, but I think a lot of that too is their elite premier centers that they had at the two top forward spots. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in general. But I'm just fascinated to see how the piece is going to work, see what Jim Montgomery's going to move around. He's a guy that's not afraid to move pieces around, both on his special teams units and his forwards. I think his pairs will be fairly consistent, but I think forwards he likes to change around a lot. But that gets me to, the next sort of question or subject, and that's some of the young blood and the new players that are going to be on this team now that we know what the roster is. And we did a podcast over the summer talking about how the Athletic had really dragged the Bruins draft and development system through the mud the last couple of years. They had the worst rated pipeline in the NHL as far as young talent goes for 2 years in a row. Yet in training camp, we see 19-year-old Matt Poitras pop and make this team as a center. We see Johnny Beecher come out of the University of Michigan, a first-round pick, and it looks like he's going to be the starting fourth-line center on this Boston Bruins team, and he won that job in camp. Just your thoughts on the two of them winning jobs and where you think they're going to fit in and what you expect out of them going into the season.
Johnny Beecher, for all of his ability to get up and down the ice, he was becoming considered not inside the organization, but outside the organization. People wondering if he was a bust, even as a future Corrali, because even if your job isn't to score goals, but to kill penalties and be opportunistic, well, then being opportunistic means you got to carpe diem. And I saw that in this camp. I didn't see that in prior seasons. In fact, I saw him almost go in a panic mode when he had his own scoring chance and somehow let the window go by, reinvent the play or something. Like, no, it can't be me. It can't be here. It can't be now. And then nothing happens. And you're like, wow, what a waste. But this kid can really play. And with that, when you have a rarity of a player in today's game who can turn a defenseman old school, when you get that kind of loping stride and you can get by people like that, then you got to find a way to reinvent it at every level you get to, which is a chore and a challenge. But now it looks to me like this kid is finally figuring it out.
Snap into action this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
And I kind of always felt like he was going to be an NHL player just because at every development camp, whenever you watched him play, the speed just popped out at you. Like the long stride, the speed, the ability to your point, to back defensemen off and really get them on their heels. He's always had that. And it's the physical size. When you combine the speed that he has with the NHL size, the ideal NHL size that he has at the forward position, the center position, and those two things together, you felt like maybe a little bit more of the offensive confidence was going to the point where like he's not going to be a big playmaker. I don't think at the NHL level. I don't think he's going to be a huge goal scorer unless something really, radically changes or improves. But he, by virtue of the speed and the physicality and the size, is going to put himself into scoring positions a lot. He's going to find himself in really good scoring areas, get grade A chances. And I think we talked about it before. I kind of equate him a little bit to Daniel Paille, who was a former first-round pick, whose speed and tenaciousness always put him into great offensive positions. He would get breakaways. He would get great chances. He just didn't have the hands to always finish them off. And I think Beecher's kind of going to be in that same category where, I think his numbers are going to end up being decent because he's going to have so many great grade A chances based on the skill set that he brings to the table. But yeah, I think where people are going to always be left wanting is complaining that he's a first round pick and he's only a fourth line center, or maybe he ends up being a third line center. And, you're drafting somebody in the first round, you have much higher sights in mind, or you should be projecting players like that to be for top line centers, like whatever,
And the Bruins wound up with Daniel Paille because of that kind of a quantity.
100%.
And, but the Bruins are extremely patient with their developing, and it almost, I don't know, maybe it's just my psychological situation viewing the crap they've taken over the 2015 draft. And there's been 8 drafts since then now. Yeah. And yet that's still like the bane of their existence. Well, there's nothing they love more than to have some homegrown players to pop into the NHL, but now they got to win with them. You got to be a good team. But if they can accomplish that, then everybody is going to be like, well, where did we get it wrong? Because Beecher was a late first round choice. They did acquire some other guys who had been in this draft and now moved on from Greer, for instance.
Yeah.
But yeah, that excites me that Beecher has become a more determined shooter of the puck. If there's a situation that presents itself, I don't see him having a mental logjam anymore. But hey, we haven't played 1 second of real NHL hockey yet. So It's early in that newfound confidence that I have. But yes, it's there. I have it. Obviously, Poitras. I learned back, 20-something years ago not to trust my eyes during development camp. Lars Jonsson lugging the puck through the middle and making it reminded me of Nicholas Lidstrom or
Jared Knight was my guy, that the London Knights kid who looked like a premium power forward. He's a former second-round pick, and then all of a sudden when the HL game started, it was like he's not. There
was a legion of people who came up with theories on how could he possibly miss. It must be Bruce Cassidy's fault. He must have poisoned the water in Providence or something. I don't know. Sammy Paulson, turned out to be a pretty damn good NHLer. But not here and not fast. Development camp, it looked like Peter Forsberg. So yeah, was I excited when I saw Poitras this summer at Warrior? Yes. I felt like there was a sturdiness about his game. I loved how he could have a velvety reception of a pass and give back the puck without looking too jello-y when he did it. He just was like, it didn't look like he was trying to show everybody how soft his hands were. He just was like bang, bang, and it was like no sound. And it's like, wow, I love watching this kid. And it just seemed to me like I'm really intrigued to see where this goes because it is his second year. He has put on weight. A lot of times, somebody like Jack Stadnicka, he went and did workout warrior mode in Foxborough one year and came back to camp, and everybody was pretty excited. I got on the bandwagon. Yep. And then what happened, and now here he goes on waivers.
And Poitras also, he put up 95 points in the OHL last year. He had a season where you said, okay, this guy's pretty dominant at this level. He's almost at that point pushing for, how much more do I have to prove here if I have another, 100-point season? And, he only had 16 goals. So maybe that's something he could have worked on if he went back there, is just being a little bit more of a dominant scoring force instead of being a playmaker. But still, 95 points is 95 points at that, level. You're starting to master that junior hockey level when you get to that point. And that's when I think the whole equation about what's better for his development comes into play, going back there and dominating again against inferior competition, or, moving up to the NHL level where it is going to be a huge leap. but you're also playing with like equally skilled players who are going to be in the right spots all the time. And if for a guy like him, who's got high hockey IQ, who's got playmaking ability, who sees the ice really well, playing with other guys that play that way and can see the ice the same way he does, it's going to bring out the best in him and, can kickstart that development to an even higher level than what it was as a 19-year-old in the OHL. And like you, I liked a lot of the other things that I saw about him. It wasn't just the passing. It was it was the little things. It was getting worked in the faceoff circle in one preseason game and then going back at practice and saying, I'm going to get better, and then vastly improving the next game based on what he had learned and processing that information so quickly and then, improving on it the next game. It was winning tons of puck battles, even though he's not the biggest guy in the world, to keep plays alive and going to the areas of the ice where you have to go.
Right. It's that stuff there that really convinced me that the best thing about Poitras is there really isn't a wrong answer here. I don't feel like he's of a character where he would go and pout and have a bad year and it would stunt his development or nor do I feel like this is rushing him in and you're going to ruin him. Yeah, sure. They're going to do this incrementally. Absolutely. We know that by the line chart right now. Yep. By the end of the 9 games, he might be centering the top line. We don't know. It might take half the season. It might take longer. It might go up and then come back. It might have to be an ebb flow thing. The bottom line is that the Bruins have done this the right way with him, and they're going to continue to do so. And Poitras, to his credit, has made their decisions look good every step of the way. So, and that's on him.
Yeah, and my prediction is that he will end up centering Brad Marchand. I think that's from what I've been told, Brad Marchand really likes him. I think he wants to play with him. I think he wants a guy with high-end skill that he can play with that's going to be able to set him up. So I think that's going to happen
I think that's the most move-around thing we can look forward to. Is it Coyle? Is it Poitras? Which way is this going to go? But there'll be people who complain and say, "Will you settle on something and give the kid a chance to just do this or that?"
Well, I think it's more like Charlie Coyle deserves a shot at a top 6 center spot. I think he's earned that. I think he should get some run there, and they look at him in that position. I think for that reason and for the reason of dipping your toes in with Poitras and putting him on the third line to start with Morgan Geekie and Trent Frederick. I think that's the best of both worlds. You're starting him off with a smaller bite and letting him sort of, show what he can do in that kind of a role in the 9 games. See, you're also giving Charlie Coyle the spot that he feels like he's earned at this point and he's eager to have. But eventually I think Poitras has the skill at a higher level than Zacha and Coyle do as far as offensive ability goes. So I think you're going to want him with the higher level offensive players. You're going to want him with somebody like Brad Marchand, and you're going to want Charlie Coyle, I think, eventually back in the third line center spot where I think he's at his best, where he's most effective. I think where the team is at its best. And let's face it, if Poitras can handle top 6 playing with Brad Marchand, you leave Zacha with David Pastrnak, and then you slide Coyle down into the third line center spot, you're starting to talk about rebuilding that depth at the forward position that you've had before and really like getting back to what you were even last year a little bit, if it all works out that way. And I think it's just going to make them a stronger team moving forward and a deeper team where that depth looked like it was really being challenged going into this year. So I think that's going to happen regardless, as long as he looks like he's NHL ready. It's just, it makes too much sense right now to start it along slowly and to, give everybody their look at the other positions before you go down that road.
I agree. And it's, strength down the middle. So help me, Harry Sinden. I mean, this is the centennial season. And if there's anything the Bruins should be, it's sturdy down the middle of the rink. And so, if there's ever been one thing about their identity, and most teams win the Stanley Cup is by having, in the last 25, 30 years, most teams win the Stanley Cup by having 2 number 1 centers.
Yeah.
So there are a few of the different model, and the Bruins may be morphing into that different model right now, where it's more of a big 3 defense. But having 2 guys who can center the top line, anybody's top line in the league is really, it looks like the Bruins may have an answer here. I'm not expecting Barry Peterson circa 81, 82, but I am looking forward to every time Poitras gets near the puck, and just play away from it as well, obviously. And hey, I don't want to put too much on the kid just because I've liked everything I've seen so far. It doesn't mean that
So there's going to be peaks and valleys for a 19-year-old in the NHL over an 82-game season, no question.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm sure there's going to be some guys who are going to want to truck him too. Yeah. So he's going to have to make sure that he has his head up when he gets his ankle caught with somebody's arm or something. That's when that's when a train's going to be going by. So that's the kind of stuff that concerns me a little bit. But I do feel like he's got a lot of savvy.
Yes, he does.
No pun intended.
There's an elusiveness to him too. Like there definitely is, as far as like being able to wiggle out of those big hits. And I think we've already seen that a little bit with him, where he has the sense to be able to avoid that stuff. And, it's funny though, like that's one of the things I was thinking last night when I was watching Bedard against the Penguins, is they were looking to, every time he had the puck, they were looking to hit him, or they were looking to get a body on him and really try to rush him and discourage him from shooting. And like, everybody that's that age, 18, 19 years old, is going to get that treatment. And Poitras is going to be no different. They're going to be looking to physically rough him up to discourage him from carrying the puck, from holding it, from, trying to hang on that extra second to make a play or to shoot the puck. So like, that's definitely going to be something to watch. On the other side of the coin, we have a player that did not make that final roster, Mason Lohrei, who I thought had an excellent camp as well. I think it's a much different position or situation with the defensemen, where they have 7 guys under NHL contract. They had to, waive Jacob Zboril and send him down to the minors, even though he's, a legitimate 7th defenseman candidate for this roster. So just your thoughts on Lohrei's camp, the decision to move him down to the AHL, and how quickly you think we're going to see him.
Yeah. I think it depends on what kind of season the Bruins have, if to think that, let's just try a few different equations. One, Lohrei does really well with his minute munching time in Providence. His AHL season is solid. He shows better acumen defensively. The one thing he wanted to do coming into this camp was close on players more aggressively and quickly and kill plays faster.
Which I thought he did a pretty good job at. He was good at that. I noticed he was fairly effective doing that with the long stick and the size.
Yeah. And so going through the whole season and getting into regular season grind, those 3-3s and everything else, it's possible to deteriorate as well down there. But I do think that in the longer curve of the season, he should be a better player in 7 months than he is right now, a more NHL ready player. Because right now, I think putting him in there, I'd feel a little Colin Miller about it. Yeah, can he skate? Yes. Can he shoot howitzers? Yes. Does he have talent? Yes. Is he going to get burned? Yes. And, I don't want to see a guy there who is going to get burned, when it's better for him to go burn his fingers on the AHL stove and let him do that there. He'll do that plenty in the NHL whenever he gets there. But I feel like as good as he's been and as encouraged as I am, I'm like, hey, AHL's perfect place. The Bruins have taken some guys and made some really good decisions by letting the likes of Nick Boynton, Johnny Boychuk, players like that bake for a whole season in the minors. Maybe they'll win their best defenseman award. What is it, Peary? Or is that the coach one? I can't remember.
I think that's the coach one. I can't remember.
Okay. Damn on that. But yeah, that's what I kind of season I'd like to see him have. And then if the Bruins are in a situation, and he's in a situation, and the stars align, then do the deadline deal. If he's there and they're there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it could even be before the deadline. I think I've said this before. I think if a few months into the season, he's played a ton of minutes, played all situations in Providence, and is dominant and is showing that he's ready. They could even pull the trigger sooner than that to bring him up if he really is pounding on the door to get in, especially like, let's say there's an injury at some point and he comes up and he plays so well at the NHL level when he gets his chance that you're like,
we're not going to look back. Charlie McAvoy against Ottawa in the 17 playoffs.
We can't send him back down. It's just not.
He wasn't supposed to even see that series.
Correct. So I feel like just with the attrition of defensemen, just with his talent level, what I saw in training camp, I think with another month or two of finish in Providence, he's going to be at that level where if he comes up, I'm not sure he's going back down. And I think that's
how they want it. I think that's how they want it. They would love to make that decision once.
And I think, frankly, they probably kicked it around a little bit to see if there was any interest in any defenseman to make the move now. And, I don't think they were going to get the value they wanted, and they weren't ready to make the move right now. And they can do it a few months. They can kick the can down the road a month or two, and there's no shame in doing that. And I think it's the more prudent move to do that because, a month or two into the season, there's going to be injuries to other teams. There's going to be more demand for defensemen. You can probably get more value. So it's not going to be a situation like it was a few years ago when they traded Boychuk right before the season started. I think whatever's going to happen will happen in season.
They don't need to do a cap compliance move.
No,
they have like
a
situation
or
here where they can play some hockey here, and they know the law of averages. Some players are going to go down, and then other teams are going to become more interested in the Bruins left side players. So we'll see what happens after that. Because you're right. On that basis, it could happen a lot sooner, especially if they like what they're getting from Lowry and they want to see what it looks like with him with McAvoy, and the team's playing well and the goaltending is really great.
I think eventually the writing is on the wall here that they know they've lost to teams, and I've said this before too. They've lost to teams in the playoffs that go 6-2, 2-10 all across the board on defensemen, and they can't get to the net, and those defensemen are keeping them out, and that's what wins in the playoffs is having a big, mobile, strong, mean defense core. And
Petrangelo, Parayko, Baumeister,
If you subtract a 5'9", 180-pound defenseman and you add a 6'2", 210-pound defenseman that can move the puck just as well and can defend certainly better around the net, that's a no-brainer. I think you have to do that before the playoffs start, and the more time you can get him to get up to NHL speed before the playoffs start, the better. So I kind of feel like the blueprint is on the wall for that. Interesting situation that's playing out here with the Bruins and the rosters. Danton Heinen is still here on a tryout, not signed to a contract yet. There's been some interesting sort of parallels in the past. Some players that have signed before the season started after making the teams on tryouts. And then I also remembered, and I looked this up yesterday, Jay Pandolfo in 2013 was with the Bruins on a tryout in training camp, but that was the lockout shortened season that started in January. And he didn't actually sign a contract until they'd already played 11, 12 games into the season, a month into the season. So it's entirely possible for Heinen to continue to practice with the team and, go through sort of everything that they're doing for, a couple of weeks here to a month on this tryout basis until they feel like they need to sign him. So it's going to be interesting to see how long that plays out for. They've brought Patrick Brown up as the 13th forward. I kind of envisioned him to be that all along when they signed him on July 1st.
Him or Boquist, right?
Yes.
Depending if they want to go right or left.
Yep. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Heinen thing plays out. I assume at some point he's going to sign, but I don't know that it's the urgency of has to be done right now. This could play out into the season a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So, hey, there's no deadline on it, and it's really up to Danton, whether or not he wants to, I mean, in the European seasons, they started already. They start early, they end early. So really the best thing he can do is hang around, keep practicing, stick with the thing that works. And then, it isn't working yet, but it's if they're willing to keep him on until they get things figured out, then why not? I mean, he's been a good player in this league, and I don't. They got to look and play some games here and see what their left wing third line looks like, and then settle in on something.
Yeah, and I think the emergence of Poitras maybe changed things as far as the plans for him too, right? There may have been one less forward spot open because of the look that he's getting, and maybe there's a link there between the 9-game look-see for Poitras and Heinen actually signing for the entire season. It'll be interesting to see if there's, the timing-wise, if there's some kind of connection between those two things. But I
perhaps because then maybe Geekie comes back to the middle.
Correct.
And now you need a wing.
Right. But I think he's shown, what he's shown in the past. He's not a line driver by any means, but he's a good complementary player. He's I think better away from the puck than he was in the past. I think he's a much better 200-foot player now.
And more aggressive when he has a chance.
Yeah. So I think, I think either way, whether it's an injury, whether it's Poitras staying or not staying, whatever, I think there's a path for him to be on the team. It just may not happen immediately. It may be delayed a little bit going into the season. some things that you're keyed on or really interested in looking at, your kind of X factors for the season, or your, storylines, narratives, whatever, that you're really interested to watch, maybe a couple as the regular season starts, things that you think are going to be keys to the success of this team, or things that you think may surprise people?
I had an interesting discussion with Kevin Shattenkirk and it kind of touches on the subject that you opened with. And that was the Bruins playing their system, their puck possession game, and how it's going to do. We saw what Paul Maurice did, which was, obviously you have to have the horses to succeed at it. They had a very heavy team.
Yep.
And a very disruptively heavy team. And they rimmed the puck hard around the boards. And they were able to hem in the Bruins, because the Bruins like to play in kind of a cluster. The short passes and intense puck support. And I didn't ask for Kevin Shattenkirk to comment on the series, but what he had to say I found to be particularly relevant to what unfolded in that series as the series wore on, as the Bruins were banged up and got tired. He said, when we were just talking systems, I asked him, have you ever played this before? And he said, no. So I looked him up. 8 NHL coaches, some pretty famous ones. He'd never played this system. Yeah. He never played anything he considered to be anything like this system. He also played for Jack Parker at BU. But he said the thing he volunteered to me, I didn't have to drag this out of him at all. He said, one of the things is that when you get into a lot of rimming of the puck, it kind of makes it harder for us to play our system, because we want to be together, but now we have to go out and cut that off, that play. Right. And once you're out that, now you're not in your system anymore. So that's why the tactic to rim those pucks, rim them hard, and just one side, then the other side. Like, what the heck are they doing? Well, the Bruins either we're going to let them do that all day and stand in the middle of the rink and never get any changes, or they're going to have to go out and cut off a play. Once you do that, now you're in that tricky land between, are we playing Monty hockey, or are we playing something else? And if it is, what's the transition? Because he says it's not just when they're breaking out the puck where you can really see the evidence of the Monty hockey, where there's always a little lateral passing outlet, so that if you get in trouble, no, you got to play it right here. And now he moves it to somebody, and he moves it to somebody, and you get this illusion of speed because the possession stays the same and the puck keeps coming up the ice. He says that, he goes, but when the other team has the puck in the cycle, he says there's a lot of switches of coverage and handoffs, and it's very layered. And when you learn it, and everybody learns it, and everybody's committed to it, and they're playing it well, it's unbelievable how well it works. But it's system hockey is funny. It's always a bit of a risk reward thing. If you fully some of them demand a higher level of commitment to the system, or adherence, maybe is a better word, in order for the system to work at all. And then if it works fabulously. But if it breaks down, it breaks down spectacular. So it's I want to see more of this year and see how it unfolds now that the Bruins need to make a competitive response to what happened to them.
I generally like Monty's system. I do think it's going to be challenged a little bit more this year, given the personnel being hyper aggressive offensively at times, being high risk in the offensive zone, really playing and pressing up against the other team. I think, the defensemen being as aggressive as they are, I think all that stuff is going to be really interesting to watch, especially with new centers. And especially with his less offensive firepower, where it may be more 3-2, 2-1 games than, them scoring 4, 5, 6 goals a game, them being the second highest powered offense in the NHL like they were last year. I think all that stuff is going to be really interesting to watch. But my thing is the goaltending. I think watching training camp, talking to them both, just seeing where Jeremy Swayman's at, I think he's poised to really even make another step up this year and start seizing more of the playing time and, really challenging. And it's funny to say this with a goalie that's coming off the Vezina Trophy last year and Linus Ullmark, but Swayman was almost right there with him last year. And I think he dedicated himself this summer to being even better and put a lot of work in. And I think it translated, I thought, in training camp, and I think it's going to translate into the season. with him, where I think he's going to surprise some people, where if he gets a little bit of a run, he may, take some games away from Ullmark, and it could even slant, 50 games for Swayman and, 30 something for Ullmark, or, 48 for him. Like, he may get the higher percentage of the starts when we look back over the course of the regular season. And he may be the guy that starts game one of the playoffs too. I definitely think it's interesting that the Bruins, the day before opening night against the Blackhawks, had not named a starting goaltender for that game as well. I think all this stuff plays into, I think the Bruins are looking at Swayman and saying he looks like he really wants it. And I think that's going to be something to watch closely, because they're going to obviously need both goalies to perform at an elite level all season long if they're going to be a playoff team, as they did last season.
So you think we might get from Lemelin mode to mode Lemelin?
Maybe.
It could be the year
they may reverse the particles, like in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, that may, can't rule these things out. You just don't know until the puck drops and they play. I'd be shocked if Linus didn't get the start. How do you win the Vezina Trophy and come back the next season and not get the number one in the first game? Whatever happens after that is what is the season. That's what happened. Right. So I that would shock me. That would be, I don't know what to do with that piece of information. That's an interesting one too. I think the point about when you were responding about the Montgomery's aggression, I still think they plan on sending that defenseman and making it a 4-man attack.
The weak side.
I think they're gonna. If anything, they might try to be more aggressive, because guys have had a chance a year to play it.
Yeah.
Personnel that's on defense is coming back.
Yep.
And so,
except for Shattenkirk. Yep.
That's right. And he's I think that old dog can learn new tricks. So especially when he's oriented offensively.
I think that style plays into his overall approach and style of play anyway. So
yeah, exactly. It's not like he's going to think some new thought for his hockey life. So I think that's there, and I think that you're right. I think it's really important that the Bruins do a good job of eating pucks and not turning pucks over, because you're not going to have David Krejci, his mind in his hands, making those decisions and passes, or Bergeron, whose skills are probably a little harder, but he always made great decisions with the puck. And
Andy erased a lot of mistakes with his hustle, his back check, his intelligence, all that stuff.
It's just an embarrassment of riches at that position for so long. I mean, when I was a kid, we had Esposito, Stanfield, and Derek Sanderson for 6 years in a row, and I thought it was awesome that happened. Now you change it up, and you got Greg Shepard, Jean Rattel, and Peter McNabb, and you're still great. But you don't have them for that many years. To have these guys this many years, if you told me that when I was 20 years old, I would say impossible.
Yeah.
But this has become what happens in the NHL because of the conditioning of the athletes, the nutrition, the medicine, the support. They're able to do this, and it's much more of a regular thing now than it was when I was first a hockey fan. So so for that era to end, it's cataclysmic. It just is. And even if Pavel Zacha really takes to this situation, and Pasta's obviously got the talent to drive the line from the wing position.
Yep.
It's become a much more popular way to look at hockey now through that lens. And Marchand will do the same for whoever's centering him. So you have that in your top six. You have that kind of presence, but you still don't have those two guys, and you have a defenseman joining your attack. They got to do a good job taking care of the puck here. Pasta's got to go yet another notch of maturity to make sure that, that he doesn't get too desperate to find offense in a play that he winds up giving the opponent a scoring chance. They don't have as many get out of jail free cards this year for that.
No, they definitely don't. And I think it speaks to just there's going to be growing pains with this team as they adjust to sort of the new world order of the Boston Bruins, what they have, what they don't have. personnel wise. I think there's going to be times where it's going to look good, and there's going to be times where you're going to notice the players that aren't there, that were world-class players that were there before, as the other centers are gaining their identity and the lines are figuring out how to play with each other, and, et cetera. So it's going to be really interesting and fascinating to watch. It speaks to us as just, I think, observers and chroniclers, how interesting it's going to be to watch, because it's going to be something very different that we're not used to. But it also, at the end of the day, it's just about excitement. The Boston Bruins are back. The NHL is back. Hockey is here. Mick and I are extremely excited about it. And I want to say, Mick, thank you very much for joining me on the Pucks with Haggs podcast. As always, we appreciate your knowledge and your presence here, and we will be asking you to come back again. I also want to thank our sponsors, Factor Meals. America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Head to factormeals.com/Haggs50 and use code Haggs50 to get 50% off your first box. Chef-made, very healthy, and delicious. And also Fanduel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's spreads, player props, over-unders, all kinds of stuff. So go to fanduel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season right by spending some money at Fanduel Sportsbook. Mick, thank you very much for coming on with us.
Pleasure.
All right, we'll see you at the Garden tonight, and we'll see all of you in the future. Thanks for listening. We'll see you at the rink.